Hey, good to see you. Glad you're here today. I say this often because it's just true. We're actually not alone right now. We're joined right now by all of our different campuses, which includes our brothers down in Lyman Correctional. We're joined by people watching online right now. So before we even get started, can you help me and welcome in the larger Flatirons family right now? Glad you're here. Hey, this is week 2 of our series called Post-Christian Jesus, all right? In case you missed last week, because, I don't know, there's like something going on. It was the 4th of something or whatever, and you were grilling burgers and blowing stuff up in your backyard, which I did. If you missed last week, let me kind of explain what this series is all about. All right, the series is all about this. At Flatirons, we believe that Jesus is still the way, he's still the truth, he's still the life. We believe that Jesus is still culturally pitch perfect, even though we're living in a society that has become increasingly more post-Christian by definition. All right, what post-Christian means is that we're living in a society that largely rejects Jesus' values and no longer views Christianity as the main foundation for its ethics and its morality and its culture. All right, last week I spent 10 to 15 minutes kind of explaining what a post-Christian society looks like and what it is and why we're living in it. And I don't want to do that every single week. And so if you're here and you're like, I could use a little more clarification on that, after this, go back, watch week 1, and that'll kind of get you caught up to speed. But we believe we're living in a post-Christian society. And if you don't believe me, then anyone who shows up to this campus today, you saw the graffiti and the broken windows on the front side of your building. There's some proof for you. They're not the biggest fans of us, but at the end of the day, we're not bummed, all right? We're not even bummed about the graffiti because we know at the end of the day that we get together to follow Jesus, and we know that Jesus at the end of the day is the author and perfecter, not only of just our faith, but he's the author and perfecter of forgiveness and hope and mercy and grace, and that's why we're here, right? So we're not bummed about living in a post-Christian society. Instead, we're just trying to figure it out together. And so throughout this series, what we're doing is we're taking a look at a few different things that every single human being needs and desires, like at a core emotional level. We desire identity and peace and justice and joy. And every single week in here, what we're doing is we're taking those things and we're seeing how culture offers us a path to those things, and then also how Jesus offers us a different path to those things. And every single week, we're just asking ourselves a question, which is, who are we going to trust when it comes to finding identity and peace and justice and joy? Are we going to trust our culture, or are we going to trust Jesus? And today we're ready to talk about peace, because every human being is dying for just a little more peace. All right, and you might be sitting out there and you're going like, I don't know, I don't really think about peace that often. I don't think I'm dying for peace. But my guess is that you're just calling it something different. The Hebrew concept for peace, the biblical idea of peace, is called shalom. And what shalom means is it's a state of wholeness and completeness. It's a state where you feel like you're lacking nothing. And my guess is that very few of us can honestly say, yep, that's how I feel. I feel completely whole. I feel complete. I've never lacked a thing a day in my life. I bet that very few of us can say that. I don't know if maybe I'm pessimistic or something. I just doubt it. And I know this is terrible. I've never claimed to be perfect, by the way. I know this is terrible, but if one of you comes out to me after this and you're like, no, really, Ben, I've never lacked anything a day in my life. I'm whole. I'm gonna smile and nod, and in my heart, I'm gonna be like, you're a certain type of whole. That's for sure. I'm kidding. See, peace means that we feel like we lack nothing. We feel completely whole. And most of us don't feel like that, which means, for example, like if you're a stay-at-home mom and you had one of those days where the kids are just absolutely insane and they won't stop whining, right? And they've drawn on the walls in Sharpie markers, and you finally reach that breaking point at like 3 p.m. where you're like, I need to go potty, but you don't. Right? You just need to go in the bathroom with a box of Cheez-Its and lock yourself in there and cry for a little bit. It's okay to admit that. Allie would tell you that's called Thursday at our house. But you're in there and you're crying because today you hate being a mom, and what you hate even more is feeling like that in the first place. In that moment, what you say you need is a break. And what you say you need is just a night away with your girlfriends. And what you say you need is a glass of wine. Those are all good things. But really, what you're hoping lies at the end of those things is peace. You want to feel whole and complete. You don't want to feel like you're lacking anything in the motherhood department. What about for the men in the room? Let's see if I'm alone in this. Have you ever had a season where you just lie awake night after night and you can't really sleep because you just don't know how you're gonna keep providing for your family for decade after decade after decade, and you feel like your income is lacking, or you feel like your job skills and your job opportunities are lacking? In those moments when we're losing sleep, we say we need a raise. Or we say we need that next promotion or a better job or a job in the first place. But what we're hoping lies at the end of that is peace. We want to feel whole and complete as our family's primary provider and protector. And we're told that we can find peace through Jesus. We're told this, in fact. We're told that the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, which means it's like a peace that you won't even be able to explain how peaceful you feel. It says the peace of God will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So we're told that we can find shalom through Jesus, this feeling of being whole and complete and lacking nothing. We're told we can find peace through Jesus, but we very rarely ever feel it. What's up with that? That's basically the question I want to tackle today is, what's up with this lack of peace in our lives? And I think there's probably, 1,000 reasons why we lack peace in our lives. But today I want to focus in on one of the biggest enemies to peace that I can see in our post-Christian culture, which is advertising. Now, some of you are sitting out there and you're like, give me a break, dude. You sound like a crotchety old man, okay? But hear me out, all right? Advertising, the point of advertising is not to make you aware of the things you genuinely need. All right? For example, you'll never find a commercial for the most basic needs in this life. You won't find a commercial for water, right? Maybe for bottled water and stuff, but you won't find one just generally for water. You won't see a commercial that's like, did you know you gotta drink like every day? Like, you'll die if you don't do that. So head down to your local creek and grab yourself some water. You're not gonna see that advertisement because advertising is not meant to make you aware of what you need. Instead, the goal of advertising is to make you desire something that you don't need, which means that advertising is most effective when it makes you feel like you're lacking something in life, specifically whatever the advertisement is selling. What's interesting is that the advertising industry wasn't always this way. It used to advertise like what a product did and what you needed and why it could be useful. But this all shifted back at World War II, right? Brief history lesson here. The advertising industry, as we know it, exploded after World War II. And that's because when it comes to supply and demand, economics 101, because of war production over the 40s, America had gotten supply down. It had these well-oiled, fully functioning factories and assembly lines and enough people to man them. And so then the war ends and we have a demand issue. People get together and they go, okay, how are we gonna keep these factories open and keep these jobs in place and keep our economy growing if we're no longer making boats and planes and weapons and helmets for the war? And now you enter the advertising industry. Like, if you ever seen that TV show, like Mad Men, it takes place, that kind of era was birthed after World War II and exploded through the 60s. And they got together and they realized we need to start focusing on creating desires in people's hearts to buy things they don't technically need. We need to create a demand that can reach our ability to supply. And we haven't looked back since. And so for 70 to 80 years now, American advertising has perfected the art of making you dissatisfied. dissatisfied. Now, here we are in 2021. Right? Did you know that the average American, between phones, computers, TVs, billboards, you name it, the average American is exposed to between 6,000 and 10,000 advertisements every single day? And the majority of those advertisements have been based on incentive studies and research. It's gone through draft after draft. It was exposed to a focus group to get feedback, and then it was run on brief campaigns and regional test markets, all to make sure that by the time the ad hits your eyes, it is perfectly designed to make you feel dissatisfied with your current life, so that it can extend the false promise that if you only buy what the ad is selling, you will find satisfaction and happiness. You'll find an extra degree of peace. We're all being fed this constant diet, 6,000 to 10,000 times a day. This idea that you don't have enough yet, but if you just buy a few more things, then you can finally be happy. So buy the new iPhone and upgrade your car and make sure your clothes are in style, and then you'll be happy. We're even told that the dumbest stuff will make us happy. Like the other day, I saw a commercial, and it was about this stay-at-home mom who's like had a terrible day, and she's at her wit's end until she finally changed the brand of her fabric softener. As if you didn't know that like the only reason they're terrible twos is because 2-year-olds are very particular about their fabric softener. It's ridiculous. But we're being told that we should buy the dumbest products and then we'll be happy. Here's the dumbest product I've seen in a while. So Allie and I, we for the last few months, instead of watching like Netflix at night, we'll read together in bed, all right? We don't read together, by the way. I don't read out loud to her, right? We have our own books. We're not psychopaths. But so we read, and then we came across this product. It's so weird. They're called lazy readers, and it's a pair of glasses with mirrors on them so that you can lay down and read a book on your lap. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Do you want to hear something dumber? I bought a pair. I'm now officially the lamest person you know. I saw that and I was like, this is a dissatisfying way to read. My neck kind of hurts. We bought them. I get them in the mail. I put them on. Guess what? Makes you feel like you have vertigo and glaucoma like all at once. Did not bring me peace, just gave me a migraine. All right, we're being told that this dumb stuff will make you happy or give you a little more peace. And then in the last 5 to 10 years, like advertising has leveled up, and here's the proof of it. All right, have you ever had that eerie moment? I literally just got chills thinking about it. That eerie moment where, let's say, for example, you're hanging out in the backyard with some friends on 4th of July at a barbecue, and you see their fire pit, and you're like, I kind of want to buy a fire pit like that. I like that. And then 5 minutes later, you're checking Facebook, and you're seeing advertisements for fire pits, and you're like, my phone's listening to me, right? Here's the good news. Your phone is not listening to you. Here's the bad news. It's way more terrifying than that. Here's what's happening when that happens. It's that advertising agencies are using something called big data. All right? I don't know if that should be pronounced data or data. I just know that saying big data sounds like a pimp name. So sounds like a Biggie Smalls song. I like it when you call me Big Dad. So I'm not gonna say it. I'm gonna say data. All right, so here's what big data is. I'm glad you laughed at that. I didn't know if you would. I like this crew. So here's what big data is. So every time you use social media or shop online or use Google or pass out your email address, anytime you click accept cookies on that one website, don't know what it means. I just know that I've never gotten a macadamia nut out of the thing. Anytime you do that, what's happening is little pieces of information about you are being logged and compiled and stored with other pieces of information about you. It's called big data. And big data knows your age and your race and where you live and your income and your marital status, how many kids you have, how many pets you have, your hobbies, your addictions, you name it. And ad agencies and businesses, they purchase this information about you so that they can send you advertisements through your phones and your computers that are specifically designed for you. Which means when your phone shows you advertisements for fire pits, your phone's not listening to you. Instead, it's more terrifying. What's happening is your big data is helping businesses accurately predict what you are going to desire and when you are going to desire it. You should Google this later if you don't believe me. Target, like the department store that I buy 100% of my gray t-shirts from. Some of you are going, he really does wear gray t-shirts all the time. I do. So Target actually claims that they can use big data so effectively that they estimate that with 80% accuracy, they can know you're pregnant before your friends and family do. Google it. In some cases, they believe they can know you're pregnant before you do. It's crazy. And that's why, even though you're still waiting for that first doctor's appointment and that first ultrasound to finally tell your friends and family, if you're paying attention, you're already getting advertisements for diapers and baby formula. This targeted advertising stuff, it's the most effective advertising the world has ever seen. And because big data has been so successful in manipulating you and me into buying stuff that we don't need, get this, back in 2017, big data beat out oil as the most valuable resource on earth. And it has been that way for 5 years and counting now. So just to be clear, to drive this point home, literally the most valuable resource on the planet is your information. It is your demographics and your deepest desires and your spending habits so that you can be manipulated into buying things you don't need. Remember our biblical definition of peace. Peace is a state of wholeness and completeness, a state where you feel like you lack nothing. Of course, it's difficult to feel whole and complete and feel like you lack nothing when 6,000 to 10,000 times a day you are seeing ads that are specifically designed to make specifically you as an individual feel like you're lacking something in this life. We're being bombarded with the constant subconscious message that you aren't yet as happy as you could be. And this consumerist, materialistic advertising machine in America, it's constantly making us a promise that it knows it can't keep. The promise is that money can buy peace. With enough money, you can buy enough things to finally feel whole and complete, but it's not working. In fact, according to recent studies, the average American in 2021 makes more money than any average American in the past. So on average, we make more money, we own bigger houses, and we have more secure jobs. And yet, at the same time, America is currently the most mentally ill civilization in measurable history. 1 in 5 of us are struggling with anxiety and depression. I'm one of them. And according to these studies, the number one thing that the average American is worried about is making more money, because we've been convinced that peace can be purchased. And so we have, of course, the constant feeling that really you could use one more pay raise. And the nagging feeling that maybe we are running out of space. We could use a little bigger house. And you've got that panicky feeling that you probably should just go against every innate fashion sense in you and just buy the 90s mom jeans so that you can fit in, or whatever. And that's because culture has promised us that money can buy peace. And we swallowed that false promise, hook, line, and sinker. See, Jesus knew that money would always threaten to take the place in our hearts of the real God. He always knew that. He knew that we would be tempted to place our faith and our trust and our hope, not in the God who promised us peace, but in the false security offered to us by that number at the top of our online bank account. In Jesus' most famous sermon, his Sermon on the Mount, he said it like this. He goes, "No one can serve 2 masters. You just can't. Right? You're either gonna hate the one master and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and you'll despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." He says at the end of the day, most of us are going to end up bowing to and worshiping and serving one of 2 gods, the God of the universe or the lowercase g God of money. And as much as we try to convince ourselves that we can do both, we can't. You cannot place all of your faith, hope, and trust in both God and money. And so he says that, and it's convicting. And immediately what's interesting is the very next words out of Jesus' mouth are all about peace versus anxiety. The very next words out of his mouth are this. He says, therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you're going to eat or drink, or worry about your body, what you will wear. He says, therefore, which ties it back into the money stuff. He goes, based on all that money stuff, don't worry about the things that you need to spend money on. And then he illustrates it. He goes, for example, think about birds. Birds aren't flying around every single day, just like worried about where their very next meal is going to come from. That's because God feeds them. And he says, think about flowers, right? Flowers aren't worried about whether or not their outfit is in style. That's because God clothes them. And then Jesus goes, even kings don't dress as well as the run-of-the-mill flowers you'll find in your neighborhood park. And then Jesus goes, God cares about you, human beings, way more than he cares about birds and flowers. And so you don't need to worry. He's going to take care of you. And then Jesus wraps this mini sermon on money and anxiety. He wraps it up by saying this. He goes, but so instead, seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow can worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And if we're not paying attention, we'll miss the connection Jesus made, the connection between money and anxiety, and the connection between God and peace. Jesus says, if you make God the master of your life, so the king of your life, then he's a loving king who cares for you. And you can find peace in the idea that he's going to care for you. But on the other hand, if you make money the king of your life, then you are bowing to a tyrant king. The tyrant king of money always demands that you make more, and it demands that you buy more things. And when you bow to the tyrant king of money, you sign up for a state of anxiety. And I know that no one in this room would outright say, like, I've made money the king of my life. But at the end of the day, like, what else should we call it? What else do we call the number one thing that the average American is worried about, the number one thing that we sacrifice our lives and time to make more of, and the number one thing that we're counting on to bring us peace and security? It sounds like a king to me. And when we bow to the king of money, it means that you do need to be anxious. You'd better be. You better be anxious about where that next paycheck comes from, and you better be worried about locking in that promotion or that pay raise. Why? Because at the end of the day, what you've really done is placed all of your faith and hope and trust in yourself and your own ability to make enough money and purchase peace. So of course you're stressed, because here you are, and the kids are getting older and older, and they're outgrowing their shoes every 6 months, right? And you're staring down the barrel of like organized sports and all the gear and equipment that you'll have to buy for that. And you're staring down the barrel of braces and orthodontics, like I am at least. Goodness. I'll spend a fortune fixing my kids' mouths. Their teeth are classically British. And on top of all that, you're staring down the barrel of retirement, right? And how else are you going to be able to quit the job that you hate that brings in the money that you think is going to purchase you peace if you don't have even more money sitting around in a 401k somewhere? And here we go. We're all bowing to and pledging loyalty to the tyrant king of money as we kill ourselves in anxiety and worry. How in the world am I going to be able to keep it up? Like, when am I ever going to be able to afford peace? Listen, the promise of our culture, we see it 6,000 to 10,000 times a day in advertising. The promise is that we must bow to what Jesus calls the tyrant king of money. Why? Because peace is what you're dying for, and money can buy peace. And then for 2,000 years and counting now, Jesus has been trying to lovingly tell us the truth. And what he's been saying to us is money can't buy peace. If it can buy anything, it can buy you anxiety. When you put your faith and trust in money and the false promise that peace can be purchased, you're asking for a lifetime of anxiety. But when you put your faith and trust in God as your provider and your protector, you can discover peace. The choice is between money and anxiety or God and peace. So practically speaking then, how can we take a step toward peace? How can we take a step away from all of our faith and trust being in our bank account and then put our faith and our trust in our God who says he'll provide for us? Well, the easiest, most practical way to do that, it is something that every single person can do this week and the next week and the next week, is the millennia-old Christian spiritual discipline of generosity. All right, in the book of Acts, Paul quotes Jesus, and Paul gives us like this little secret to living the good life. Paul says this is Paul. He says, I've not coveted anyone's silver or gold or clothing. Instead, in everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself said. And then he quotes Jesus. Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Paul says we should follow his example because his example is based on Jesus's example. And Paul says he didn't covet money, or in other words, he didn't obsess over what he needs and what would make him happier if only he could afford it. Instead, he focused on putting in the kind of hard work it took to, quote, help the weak. Or in other words, to give away the resources he did have to help the people who didn't have enough. And then what seems backwards at first is that Paul discovered that the more he gave away to help others, the more he himself felt blessed. See, according to both Paul and Jesus, two things happen when we're generous with our money. The first thing is other people are blessed, and we understand that one. All right, it's like we know that, for example, if you buy dinner and drop it off for the friends of yours who just had a baby, we understand that that act blesses that family. Even if we don't understand it, you can't change the fact that like we're commanded to live that way. Christians are. Which means if you're not a Christian and you're just here checking the church thing out, first of all, welcome. You're also off the hook right now. I'm not talking to you specifically, even though even you know the people you admire the most in life are generous people. But for the Christians in the room, we're told to live this way. We are commanded to live this way, whether you're lower, middle, or upper class. And we're told to live this way because Jesus first lived this way toward us. We're told this in 1 John. 1 John says this is how we know what love is, right? Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and so we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers, which means if you claim to follow Jesus, our entire definition of love is supposed to be all wrapped up in the fact that Jesus gave himself away for us. And then in return, we're supposed to give ourselves away to other people. And I know I'm with you. It's tempting at first to write off the money stuff and go, well, I give myself away by being encouraging or by praying for other people or by being a good listening ear. Those are all fantastic things. Keep doing those things. But we can't weasel out of the very next verse in 1 John, which is this. If anyone has material possessions, money and stuff, and sees his brother in need but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him? Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth. Or to put that last part in my own words, dear children, put your money where your mouth is. Don't just say you love people. Open your doors to them. Don't just say you love people. Open your pantries to them. And then don't just say you love people. Open, and now everyone's going, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Open your wallets to them. Put your money where your mouth is. Listen, I wish we could, but we can't avoid the command to give away our money in order to bless other people. It is cover to cover in the Bible. But again, the crazy thing is that Jesus says it's actually more blessed to give than to receive. So Paul and Jesus, again, they say two things happen when we're generous with our money. The first thing is that other people are blessed, which we understand. The second one is that we end up getting blessed. You are blessed when you do that. And honestly, you can't get more countercultural than that. Like we've talked about, our culture has bought into this idea that peace can be purchased, which means peace is found in receiving more money so that we can buy and receive more things and hopefully then receive more happiness and satisfaction. But Paul and Jesus are both saying the same thing. They're saying that peace actually isn't found in receiving. Peace is found in giving away. Paul claims that the more he gave away, the more he realized he didn't lack anything. And Paul claims that the more he let go of trusting in money, the less anxious he felt. Why? Well, because when we're generous with our money, it's an act of faith. It is an act of letting go. letting go of the tyrant king of money who keeps making us the promise that it can purchase us peace. We let go of that so we can take hold of God. What we're doing is we're saying, all right, God, listen, right now I'm actively trusting you. I'm trusting that this money and my bank account will not bring me peace. Instead, I trust that you will. And so I'm hanging on to you, and I'm going to consider you my ultimate provider. And I'm going to find my peace in you. It's letting go of anxiety and holding on to peace. And so here's the challenge this week. If you want to take a step away from the anxiety that comes with trusting in your bank account and take a step toward the peace that comes with trusting in God, then the challenge is this: bless others and yourself by being generous with your money. And I'm not dumb. And so I know that immediately that idea coming from me, a pastor, in the middle of a sermon, it makes some of us cringe. At the same time, I'm not cringing. And that is because, first of all, God has commanded it of us cover to cover. And then second of all, I know from personal experience, it actually ends up blessing you. Plus, just in case, like if you want to take a fresh breath of air, like I really mean it when I say this. The point of this sermon today is not to give money to Flatirons, all right? Genuinely, like personally speaking, just personally speaking, that is what Allie and I do, all right? We routinely give away our money and we give it to this church as an act of worshiping and trusting in God. And we chose to give our money here because I get to see behind the curtain of this place. Like, I get to see how things actually work. And so I know and I have the complete assurance that the money Allie and I give is actually being spent to bless other people. All right, our CFO here, his name is Michael Kane. He's one of the greatest people I know. He doesn't get enough credit, but Michael's entire job is he works tirelessly to ensure that 100% of the money that you put in a blue bucket at the back or that you donate online is spent faithfully to help other people. You can ask anyone on staff at Flatirons who has been begging for new Xerox machines for a decade now. Like, these things don't work. And he's like, that doesn't bless other people. And we're like, dang it, okay. I love it about him. At Flatirons, all the money you give is spent to either help us more effectively share the awesome life of Jesus with people who don't know it's awesome yet, or it's spent to take care of the immediate needs of people in our cities and near our campuses, or it's spent to take care of the immediate needs of people living all over the world. And so for Allie and I, we give our money to this place. All right, because I know that I'm really giving my money to Michael Kane, and Michael Kane is going to help make sure that my money is faithfully spent to bless other people. And so I will say, I have to say this, if you trust this church, I can say in complete confidence and integrity, if you want to try this generosity thing out, you should totally give money to this church. You get to cut a check knowing that you're blessing the world. It's dope, right? With that being said, if you don't want to give money to this place for some reason, that's fine. Because honestly, the point of this message today is not to give money to Flatirons. The point of this message is to take Jesus at his word and see if it really does bless others and yourself by being generous with your money. Go give it to another organization that you believe is going to use your money to bless other people. Or even better, cut out the middleman. Cut us out, cut out some other organization, handle it yourself, which means offer to help with repairs for the car that's been broken down in your neighbor's driveway for weeks, or call up that buddy of yours who's in between jobs and say, hey, dude, I've been there before. I just want to help with rent this month. Or if that's out of your price range, hey, dude, I've been here before. Tonight, I just want you to take a load off, not worry about it. I want to buy you dinner. Just try it. The point is to be generous with your money and then see if it ends up blessing others and blesses you. The point isn't necessarily where you give your money, although you should be wise about it. And the point isn't how much money you give, although it should probably be enough to feel a little bit risky. But instead, the point is to let go of the thing that we have been clinging to, hoping that it's going to bring us security and peace, and instead let go of it and grab onto Jesus as our ultimate provider. And honestly, if you're tired of losing sleep because you don't know where your next paycheck is going to come from, or you're worried about the promotion and the pay raise, and if you're tired of the constant message of our culture that you don't own enough yet, and so you yourself aren't enough yet, And if you're tired of the never ending and honestly never fulfilling attempt to purchase peace by making sure our clothes are trendy and we own the newest, shiniest gadgets and we're gambling and investments, you name it, if you're trying to chase after peace by trying to purchase it while it constantly stays outside your fingertips, if you're tired of that, what do you have to lose? Why not take the leap and try the thing that Jesus promises will lead to less anxiety and more peace? Why wouldn't you try to bless others and yourself by being generous with your money? Culture says that peace is found in receiving more. And Jesus says peace is found in giving more away. But at the end of the day, I am not your Holy Spirit. I don't want to be. And I'm not your conscience. I don't want to be. And so you have to decide for yourself, who are you going to trust when it comes to genuine peace? Your culture or Jesus Christ? Let's pray. All right, God, ultimately, I thank you for this convicting truth that you have been saying to us since the beginning of time. God, it's convicting, it's invasive. Anytime we have to sit around and talk about your view of money and the level of faith and trust we've put in it, like it makes us anxious. And ultimately, that's just proof that we have placed our faith and our trust in our bank account. So ultimately, God, I thank you for this convicting truth because it's convicting, but I also know that it really does lead to peace. I know it from personal experience. Allie and I know that. So God, I pray this week that you would give us the courage it takes to trust you on this one and to just try it out and to be generous and to take care of our neighbors and our friends and our family. God, I pray for the courage to give it a shot. And then I already thank you in advance for keeping your promise. The more that we do that, the more that we give away, the more blessed we feel. It doesn't make sense in our culture, but it's true. So God, I pray for the courage to try it. And I thank you for keeping your promise that when we try it, we'll feel more peace. God, right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna sing one more song before we head out of here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna sing and we're gonna reflect on the words in the song because this song is all about an invitation to just let go of the things that we falsely put our trust in so that we can hold on to you and say confidently, at the end of the day, you are all I need and you are enough. So God, as we sing that right now, would that be an act of worship to you? Give us the courage to try this generosity thing throughout the week. I love you very much, and I pray this in the name of your son, Jesus Christ, who was the first to give all away for us. I pray this in his name, Jesus Christ. Amen.